They threw me out on my 30th birthday with a packed suitcase and no goodbye. Would I let them crush me, or would I fight back? Hey friends, I'm on, sharing my story to show how I rose from betrayal. Where are you watching from today? Drop a comment with your city and hit that subscribe button to join me on this journey. I was 30 when my world fell apart. It was my birthday, October 12th, and I thought I'd at least get a smile from my parents, Cullen and Vera. Instead, they handed me a suitcase and told me to leave our small house in Ridgeway, Ohio. The air outside smelled like crisp fall leaves, damp from morning rain. The sun was sinking low, painting the sky a sad soft orange that made the cracked driveway glow like it was hiding secrets. I just bought a little vanilla cake from the corner bakery, its red icing crooked and messy. It cost $20, all I could spare after paying their bills, electric, internet, half the mortgage. I carried the cake in a thin plastic bag, the handle digging into my hand as I walked up the porch steps. The wood creaked under my boots, same as always, like the house was groaning about its own weight. Inside, the kitchen felt wrong, like the air was too thick to breathe. The lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale cold glow that made everything look tired. The chipped counter, the wobbly table, even my parents' faces. Dinner was already set out, meatloaf, sliced thin and dry, canned green beans that smelled like tin, and lumpy mashed potatoes from a box. My dad Cullen sat at the head of the table, his whiskey glass chipped at the rim, catching the light like a warning. My mom Vera didn't look up, just fussed with her fork, pushing beans around her plate like they'd done her wrong. The TV in the living room hummed low, some game show with fake laughter. I set the cake on the counter, the bag crinkling louder than I meant it to, and hung my coat on the hook by the door. My fingers felt cold, even though the house was warm. "You're late," Cullen barked, not even glancing my way. His voice was rough, like gravel under tires. I slid into my chair, the wood scraping the floor. "Work ran late," I said softly, my voice flat. "Had to finish some reports." I didn't apologize. I'd learned that didn't help. Mom stayed quiet, her lips pressed tight, like she was holding words she'd never say. Cullen grunted, pouring more whiskey into his glass, the liquid sloshing a little. I felt the room grow heavy, like a storm cloud settling over us. We started eating, forks clinking against plates, the sound sharp in the silence. No happy birthday, no card, not even a nod to the cake sitting there, its icing smearing against a plastic box. I'd stopped expecting parties years ago, but this felt different, like the quiet before something breaks. I pushed a clump of potatoes around my plate, my stomach too tight to eat. I should have known something was coming. Cullen never stayed quiet for long, not when he had something mean to say. Halfway through his meatloaf, he slammed his fork down, hard enough to make Mom jump in her seat. The sound shot through me, straight up my spine, like a warning bell. He leaned back, his chair creaking, and stared at me with eyes cold as winter. "You're too old to freeload," he said, his voice sharp and rehearsed, like he'd practiced it. "Time you left." For a second, the words didn't make sense, like they were floating in the air, not real. I blinked at him, my fork frozen in my hand. I looked at Mom, hoping she'd laugh, say it was a joke, or at least look sorry. Her eyes stayed on her plate, her lips so tight they looked white. Her hands twisted in her lap, but she didn't speak. "I pay the internet," I said, my voice slow, careful, like I was stepping on thin ice. "The electric bill, half the mortgage, groceries." I listed it all, facts laid out plain, hoping they'd hear me. Cullen laughed, a short, mean sound that felt like a slap. "Paying a few bills doesn't buy you a place forever, princess." That word, princess, cut deep. When I was little, maybe 5 or 6, I'd climb onto his lap with scraped knees and messy pigtails, and he'd call me that, his voice warm, his smile soft. Now it was twisted, a weapon to make me feel small. My chest cracked, but I didn't let it show. This wasn't a sudden fight, a drunken rant I could brush off. They'd planned this, waited for my birthday to make it hurt more. My cake sat on the counter, one candle missing from the box, probably lost in my car. It felt like a sign, something was missing here, and it was me. I pushed my plate away, the meatloaf cold now, the smell turning my stomach. I stood, my chair scraping loud against the floor. They watched me, waiting for tears, begging, something to prove they were right to hurt me. I didn't give it to them. Got it, I said, my voice flat final. Cullen smirked, like he'd won a game I didn't know we were playing. Mom's shoulders sagged, shame in the way she slumped, but not enough to make her speak, not enough to stop me from being thrown away like trash. I walked toward the stairs, pausing by the counter where the cake sat, its plastic handle stretched thin from the weight. I didn't pick it up. I let it stay there, a sad little thing nobody wanted. Each step up the stairs creaked, loud and accusing, like the house was shouting what they wouldn't say. I closed my bedroom door and leaned against it, the wood cool against my back. My chest felt hollow, like something had been scooped out. This house wasn't mine anymore, maybe it never was. I sat on my bed, the springs squeaking, and stared at the half-packed suitcase in the corner. I'd started packing weeks ago, a few clothes here, a book there, like I knew this was coming but didn't want to believe it. I thought paying their bills, fixing their leaks, buying their tires would make them love me. I thought I could earn a place here. I was wrong. The room smelled like old carpet and dust, the kind that settles when nobody cares. My eyes landed on the cake box I'd carried upstairs without thinking. Its sweet frosting smell filled the air too strong, making my head hurt. I stared at it, the red icing smeared against the plastic, saying happy birthday in crooked letters. Happy birthday, Ann, I whispered, my voice breaking just a little. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and sharp, but I didn't let them fall. I pushed the cake off the nightstand, and it hit the carpet with a soft thud, the box crumpling, icing smearing like a wound. I grabbed my laptop from under the bed, my hands steady now, like they knew what to do even if my heart didn't. I opened it, the screen glowing soft in the dark room. I logged into the electric company's website, my fingers flying over the keys. I'd paid that bill for years, ever since Dad forgot one winter and we went 2 days without heat. I clicked cancel autopay, then remove account. Gone. Next was the water bill, then the internet, the cable, all in my name, all paid by me. Each click felt like cutting a rope that tied me here. I moved my money from the joint account Mom insisted we keep for emergencies. I froze the savings I'd set up for them, the one I thought was for our family. No more. Downstairs the TV still blared, fake laughter echoing up the stairs. I pictured them sitting there, Dad with his whiskey, Mom with her silence, thinking they'd won, but I wasn't done. This wasn't about hurting them, it was about saving me. I packed the last of my things, a sweater, a notebook, my work shoes, my hands moving like they belonged to someone else. Tomorrow I'd leave for Nora's place, my car already packed with what mattered. Tonight I was breaking free. As I closed my laptop, the wind outside rattled the windows, carrying the sharp smell of fall. Change was coming, and for the first time I wasn't afraid. The morning after my birthday, I woke up on a lumpy couch in my friend Nora's apartment, the air smelling like fresh coffee and old books. Sunlight slipped through cheap blinds, striping the wooden floor with gold. My suitcase sat by the door, its zipper glinting like it was waiting for me to decide who I was now. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, loud as an angry bee, 12 missed calls from Mom and Dad, plus a few numbers I didn't know, probably nosy relatives. I stared at the screen, my heart thumping hard, like it was trying to run somewhere I wasn't ready to go. Part of me wanted to listen, to hear them say it was a mistake, that they needed me, but another part, small but growing, whispered, "You don't owe them anything." I set the phone down, my hands cold against the warm mug Nora handed me. "You okay?" she asked, her hair messy from sleep, her eyes kind but sharp. I nodded, but my chest felt heavy, like I was carrying a brick inside it. "You're allowed to save yourself, and," she said, sitting across from me on a wobbly stool, her words wrapped around me like a blanket, soft but strong. I sipped a coffee, bitter and hot, and stared at the cracked ceiling. The apartment smelled safe, dusty books, lavender from a candle, the faint hum of a fridge. It was nothing like my parents' house, with its buzzing lights and sour whiskey air. Here I could breathe, even if each breath hurt. My phone buzzed again, a text from my cousin Tyler. No lights at the house, no internet. Dad's furious, Mom's crying. I pictured their dark kitchen, the TV silent, the fridge warm. They were feeling it now, the life I'd held together for years. I'd cancelled the electric, water, internet, all the bills I paid while they called me a freeloader. Another text popped up, this time from Dad. You'll regret turning your back on family. The words stung, sharp as a slap, but I saw them for what they were, anger, not love. Then a voicemail from Mom, her voice shaky like she'd been crying. Honey, there's a mistake. You wouldn't leave us like this. We're family, call me. Family. That word felt like a lie now, twisted to make me feel guilty for saving myself. I set the phone face down, the screen cold against the table. My hands shook, but not from fear, from something new, like a spark catching fire. I'd spent years fixing their problems, new tires for Mom's car, a dentist bill for Dad, shingles for the leaky roof. I thought it made me belong, but they'd thrown me out like an old coat, and now they wanted me back because their lights were off. Nora watched me, her mug steaming. They'll try to pull you back, she said. Don't let them. I nodded, the brick in my chest shifting, not lighter yet, but different. That afternoon, Nora dragged me to a town festival at the square. The air smelled sweet, like caramel apples and warm hay bales stacked for kids to climb. A brass band tuned up by the courthouse, their notes wobbly but cheerful. Children squealed in bounce houses, their laughter sharp against the chatter of neighbors. I stayed near the edges, my boots crunching on fallen leaves, trying to be invisible. My jacket felt too thin for the fall chill, sneaking under my collar like a warning. I didn't want to see anyone who'd ask about my parents, who'd look at me like I'd done something wrong, but I couldn't hide forever. I heard Dad's voice, loud and bitter, by the apple bobbing booth. He stood there, his face red, a beer can in his hand, talking to a small crowd. My daughter abandoned us, he said, his words carrying like poison. After all we sacrificed, she walked out. No loyalty kids these days. Some people nodded, their faces soft with pity. Others glanced away, their eyes unsure, like they knew there was more to the story. My stomach twisted, hot and tight. I wanted to march over, shout the truth, that I'd paid their bills, kept their house standing, given up my dreams for them, but Nora grabbed my arm, her grip gentle but firm. Don't, she whispered, let them talk. Truth comes out on its own. We walked past booths selling pumpkin pies and knitted scarves, the smells mixing with the crisp air. Whispers followed me, soft but sharp. A neighbor said, wasn't Anand the one who fixed their driveway? Another muttered, I heard she paid their electric for years. My cheeks burned, but not from shame, from hope, maybe, that people saw me, not just their lies. We stopped by a cider stand, the warm drink steaming in paper cups. Nora handed me one, her eyes steady. You're not alone, she said, people know more than you think. Back at her apartment, the sky turned purple, stars blinking through the window. I sat on the couch, my phone heavy in my hand. Friends had texted photos, my parents' house dark, no porch light, newspapers piling up by the door. They weren't ashamed of hurting me, they were ashamed people might notice their lights were off. I scrolled through more messages. Tyler wrote again, Dad's yelling at the electric company now. I almost laughed, but it stuck in my throat. They'd built their life on my back, and now they were crumbling without me. The guilt came then, fast and sneaky, like a shadow I couldn't shake. What if they were suffering? What if Dad was sick like Mom said? Memories flashed. Birthdays with homemade cakes, Mom braiding my hair when I was little, Dad teaching me to ride a bike. They weren't all bad, were they? Maybe I was too harsh, cutting them off like that. I stared at the phone, my thumb hovering over Mom's number. Then another text from Tyler. Mom's faking tears to make you call. The guilt froze, turning cold and hard. They didn't miss me, they missed what I did for them. I opened my phone settings, my finger steady now. One by one, I blocked their numbers. Dad's, Mom's, Aunt Marcy's, who'd probably call to scold me soon. Each tap was like closing a door, quiet but final. It wasn't anger driving me, it was mercy for myself. I didn't need their voices in my head anymore. Nora came out of the kitchen, holding a plate of leftover pizza. You look like you just won a war, she said, smiling. I shrugged, but my lips twitched up. Maybe I did, I said, my voice soft. As I fell asleep that night, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the fridge, I felt something new. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine, like a clean page in a book I was just starting to write. Outside, the wind rustled through the oak trees, carrying the smell of damp earth and fallen leaves. Tomorrow would bring more battles, I knew that. But tonight, I'd taken my first step away from their lies. I wasn't their doormat anymore. I was on, and I was enough. A week after I moved to Nora's apartment, I was sitting at her wobbly kitchen table, sipping weak coffee from a chipped mug. The air smelled like burnt toast and rain, the kind that sticks to your skin and makes everything feel heavy. Sunlight filtered through the window, catching dust floating in the air like tiny sparks. I was trying to focus on a job application, my laptop screen glowing soft, when my phone buzzed hard against the table. I thought it was another rejection email, but it was a text from Carrie, an old co-worker. "You seen what your dad posted?" she wrote, with a link to our town's Facebook group. My stomach dropped, like I'd missed a step on the stairs. I clicked it, my hands already shaking. There it was, Dad's post, like a punch to the chest. "Some daughters are raised to be grateful, some turn into snakes. Our daughter left us sick, starving, abandoned. Pray for us." The words burned into my eyes, each one sharper than the last. Over 100 comments already, people I barely knew calling me a brat, ungrateful, a bad daughter. "Kids these days," one wrote. "She spit on her parents' love." Another said. My cheeks burned, hot and tight, like the air was pressing against me. I wanted to scream, to hide, to disappear. Nora leaned over from the kitchen counter, her brows pulling together. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice steady but worried. I couldn't speak, just turned the phone to show her. She read it, her lips pressing thin. "They're writing your story for you, Ann," she said. "Are you gonna let them?" I set the phone down, the screen cold against the table. My heart pounded, loud as a drum in my ears. For years I'd kept their secrets, paid their electric when Dad forgot, bought new tires for Mom's car, patched the roof in the rain while Dad drank beer inside. I'd given up my savings, my vacations, my own dreams, thinking it made me family, and now they were painting me as the villain, telling the town I'd abandoned them. The heartbreak was there, heavy as ever, but something else burned brighter, defiance, like a fire I didn't know I had. I wasn't going to let their lies win. I stood and grabbed a folder from a drawer by the couch. It was heavy, stuffed with papers I'd kept for years, receipts, bank statements, emails, proof of every bill I'd paid, every repair I'd covered, electric bills in my name from when I was 19, mortgage payments pulled from my account, emails with the landlord about fixing the water heater. Each paper was a memory, a piece of me I'd given to a house that never wanted me. I sat back down, my laptop open, and started scanning. My hands were steady now, moving like they had a plan. Nora watched, stirring sugar into her coffee. "You sure?" she asked, not judging, just checking. I nodded. "I'm done being invisible," I said, my voice quiet but strong. I wrote a post, keeping it simple, clear, like laying out cards on a table. I uploaded screenshots, electric bills, water bills, internet, all with my name, bank statements showing money leaving my account for their mortgage, even when Dad's paycheck could have covered it, emails about the roof I fixed, the tires I bought, the dentist bill I paid when Dad broke a tooth. At the end, I wrote one line. "They asked me to leave. They lost the daughter who kept their lights on." My finger hovered over the post button, my heart thumping hard. I took a breath, smelling the rain outside, and clicked. For a moment, there was nothing, just the hum of the fridge and the tick of a clock on the wall. Then my phone buzzed, slow at first, then faster, like a heartbeat waking up. Likes came first, then comments, then shares. A neighbor wrote, "I saw Anne shoveling their driveway alone at 16, while her parents yelled from the porch." Another said, "Cullen bragged he never paid a cent for bills once Anne got a job." The truth was spreading, like ripples in the pond behind the library. My chest felt lighter, like I'd let go of a breath I'd been holding for years. Dad posted again, saying I was exaggerating, looking for pity. "Sad, really," he wrote. But nobody bought it. Comments piled up under his post. "Funny how you never mentioned her paying your bills," one said. "You don't look sick cashing her checks." Another snapped. I didn't smile, but I felt something shift, like the ground under me was finally solid. Mom's voicemails came next, one after another, her voice soft and shaky. "Anne, please take it down," she said. "It's a misunderstanding. People will think badly of us." I listened to one, then deleted the rest. It wasn't about regret. They cared about their reputation, not me. Nora sat across from me, her coffee cold now. "You did good," she said, her eyes warm. I nodded, but the hurt was still there like a bruise I could feel when I moved. That afternoon we went back to the town square for the fall festival. The air smelled of roasted corn and sweet cider, the kind that warms your hands and your insides. Kids laughed, running through hay bales, their boots kicking up dust. The brass band played an off-key song, and fairy lights twinkled as the sun dipped low, painting the sky pink. I wore my old jacket, the one with a frayed collar, and stayed near the edges, my boots crunching on gravel. People's eyes followed me, but they weren't harsh anymore. They were soft, sad, like they were seeing me for the first time. Mrs. Langford, my old elementary teacher, caught my eye by the pie booth. She gave me a small, sad smile, her gray hair tucked under a scarf. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, squeezing my hand. A lady from Mom's church, someone I barely knew, stepped up as I passed the pumpkin carving station. Her hand was gentle on my shoulder. "You deserved better, sweetheart," she said, her voice quiet. We all knew, we were just too scared to say it. My eyes stung, tears hot behind my lids, but I didn't let them fall. I nodded, my throat tight, and mumbled, "Thank you." The words felt too small for the weight they carried. Nora and I kept walking, the smell of caramel apples mixing with the cool air. We stopped by a booth selling knitted hats, the yarn soft under my fingers. Whispers floated around us, neighbors talking, piecing together the truth. "Wasn't she the one who paid for Vera's tires?" Someone said. "Cullen never fixed that roof himself." Another added. The tide was turning, slow but sure, like a river carving a new path. I wasn't the villain anymore. I was just Anan, the girl who'd given too much and finally said enough. That night, back at Nora's, we ate leftover spaghetti on the couch, the TV off, the room quiet except for the creak of the floorboards. Nora raised her fork like a toast. "To survival," she said, her smile small but real. I lifted my fork, my lips twitching. "To never apologizing for saving yourself," I added. As fireworks burst over the courthouse lawn, red and gold tearing open the sky, I stood by the window, my breath fogging the glass. The shame I'd carried wasn't mine, it was theirs. For the first time I felt like I belonged, not to them, but to me. 2 days after I posted the truth online, I was sitting on Nora's couch, the morning light sneaking through the blinds, painting stripes on the wooden floor. The air smelled like damp leaves, and the leftover coffee cooling in my mug. I was scrolling through job listings, my laptop warm on my knees, when a knock came at the door. It wasn't loud or angry, just a polite tap, like someone afraid to be noticed. Nora glanced at me from the kitchen, her spoon frozen in her cereal bowl. "You expecting anyone?" she asked, her brows scrunched. I shook my head, my stomach twisting like it knew something I didn't. I opened the door, my socks scuffing the floor, and found a police officer standing there, his uniform crisp, holding a big yellow envelope. "Miss Anne Marin?" he asked, his voice flat, like he'd done this 100 times. I nodded, my throat tight. "You've been served," he said, handing me the envelope. "Contacts inside if you have questions." I thanked him, my voice small, and closed the door with a soft click, the sound echoing in the quiet room. The envelope felt heavy, like it carried more than paper. I sat at the kitchen table, the wood wobbly under my elbows, and slid my finger under the flap. The papers inside were cold, official, with sharp black words that hit like stones. Cullen Merrin versus Anne Merrin. My dad was suing me for theft, emotional elder abuse, and financial abandonment. The words blurred, my eyes stinging, not from tears but from shock. Theft. I'd paid their bills for years, electric, water, mortgage, even Dad's dentist when he broke a tooth. Elder abuse. I'd spent my 20s keeping their house from falling apart while they called me a freeloader. My chest burned, a mix of heartbreak and anger, like a fire I couldn't put out. Nora read over my shoulder, her breath catching. "They're trying to destroy you because you walked away." For a moment, that old guilt crept in, sneaky and cold, like the draft under Nora's window. The voice in my head whispered, "Maybe you're too harsh. Maybe you should have stayed quiet." I saw flashes of my childhood, Mom baking me a lumpy cake when I was 7, Dad carrying me on his shoulders at the fair. Were they really this cruel, or was I the bad one? I shook my head, my hair brushing my cheeks, and pushed the papers away. That voice had kept me trapped for years, making me think I owed them everything. Not anymore. I looked at Nora, her eyes fierce but worried. "I'm done apologizing for saving myself," I said, my voice steady like a promise. By noon I was on the phone with a legal aid office in Columbus. The lady on the other end, Miss Carter, had a calm voice like a teacher reading a story. I told her everything, how I'd paid their bills, fixed their house, given up my savings. I sent her my folder, the one stuffed with receipts, bank statements, emails about repairs. Each file was a piece of truth, proof they'd used me. You've got a strong case, Aang, Miss Carter said. You could sue them for exploitation, using your money under emotional pressure. I didn't want revenge, just my life back. I filed a complaint, listing how they'd guilted me into paying for years, how they'd turned love into a debt I could never settle. My hands didn't shake as I emailed the files, the laptop screen glowing in the dim kitchen. Mom called an hour later, her voice trembling through the phone. Aang, please, you're tearing this family apart, she said, her words sticky with fake tears. We only wanted what's best for you. Your father's not well. I stared at the table, the wood scratched from years of use, and didn't answer. An hour after that, Dad texted, short and mean. You think you won. Family gets the last word. I read it, my heart thumping once, twice, then set the phone down. Their words were poison, but I wasn't drinking it anymore. I pictured their house dark now, no lights, no heat, the fridge silent. They weren't fighting for me, they were fighting for control. 2 days later, I stood outside the police station, my legal papers in a folder, a volunteer advocate from the aid office by my side. Her name was Sarah, and she smelled like peppermint, her scarf soft against her coat. The building was gray and plain, no scarier than the post office, but it felt heavy, like it held the weight of my whole life. Inside, Dad sat at a battered wooden table, his face red, his hands clenched. Mom was next to him, twisting the strap of her old purse, her eyes red and puffy. They looked smaller than I remembered, angrier, weaker. The officer, a man with a tired face, explained my evidence, receipts, emails, bank records showing years of payments. If you pursue these false charges, he told them, you could face defamation or financial abuse claims. Dad shoved his chair back, the legs rattling loud against the floor. This is a witch hunt, he snapped, his voice echoing off the cinder block walls. She's manipulating everyone. Mom sobbed, loud and dramatic, her hands covering her face. I didn't flinch, didn't speak. I didn't need to. The truth was louder than their noise. They stormed out, Dad's boots stomping, Mom's sobs trailing behind. The officer turned to me, his voice low. You did the right thing, An. Don't let anyone tell you different. I nodded, my throat too tight to talk. Outside, the sun was bright, sharp against the cool autumn air. It smelled like pine and wet pavement, like the world was clean and new. I stood there, my boots crunching gravel, letting the light soak into my skin. The weight I'd carried for years, guilt, shame, the need to fix them, lifted a little more, like leaves blowing away in the wind. Back at Nora's, I sat on the couch, the folder of papers next to me. I pulled out the little plastic cake topper from my birthday, the one from the night they threw me out. It was bent, cheap, glinting in the lamplight. It didn't hurt to look at anymore. It wasn't about them, it was about me, the girl who survived. I set it on a shelf by the window, a tiny trophy for standing tall. Nora came in, her sneakers squeaking, and handed me a mug of tea, the steam smelling like mint. You're stronger than they'll ever know, she said. I smiled, small but real, and sipped the tea, warm against my lips. That night, I stood by the window, the town's lights flickering like stars below. The air smelled of wood smoke, carried by a breeze that rattled the glass. I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd faced their lies, their lawsuit, their anger, and I was still here. The heartbreak was still there, soft and quiet, but the defiance burned brighter. I was free, not just from them, but from the girl who thought she had to earn their love. As I turned away from the window, the moon hung low, silver and calm. Tomorrow would bring new fights, but tonight, I'd won. A week after facing my parents at the police station, I stood in a small apartment downtown, my new home. The key in my hand felt cold, its edges sharp, like it was daring me to believe this was real. The building was old, with creaky floors and windows that rattled when the wind blew, but it was mine. The air smelled like fresh paint and dust, the kind that settles in corners nobody's touched in years. Sunlight poured through a cracked window, lighting up the bare walls I'd painted pale blue, like the sky on a clear day. I'd signed a lease that morning, my pen shaking just a little, not from fear but from excitement. For the first time, I wasn't living for anyone else. Nora stood by the door, holding a chipped mug of coffee, her smile wide. "To new beginnings," she said, raising the mug like a toast. I laughed, soft and real. "To choosing myself," I added, my voice steady. My phone stayed quiet now, no buzzing, no angry texts from Dad or teary voicemails from Mom. I'd blocked every number tied to that old life. Dad's, Mom's, Aunt Marcy's, even cousins who'd called to scold but never to check on me. Each tap on my screen had felt like closing a gate, locking out the guilt they'd piled on me for years. I spent my days doing small things, buying a faded green couch from a thrift store, its cushions soft but sagging, a wobbly kitchen table with scratches like stories, a lamp with a crooked shade that glowed warm at night. Each piece was mine, chosen not to fix someone else's life, but to build my own. The apartment smelled like lemon cleaner now, mixed with the crisp fall air sneaking through the windows. It felt foreign, this freedom, but precious, like a gift I was still unwrapping. One morning, as I unpacked a box in the living room, I found a card slipped under my door, no name on the envelope. The paper was plain, the handwriting careful. "You were never the problem. Some people fear the ones they can't control." I read it twice, my fingers tracing the words, and smiled. I didn't need to know who sent it. Maybe a neighbor, maybe Mrs. Langford from the festival. The truth was enough, settling in my chest like a warm stone. I tucked the card into a drawer, next to my lease, a quiet reminder that I wasn't alone. Days blurred into a soft, golden rhythm. I made coffee in a second-hand pot, the smell filling the apartment like a hug. I walked to the corner store for milk, the gravel crunching under my boots, the air sharp with the scent of pine and fallen leaves. I tweaked my resume for the 100th time, sending it to jobs in nearby towns, my laptop humming on the wobbly table. These were small things, but they felt big, like I was learning to breathe without looking over my shoulder, without waiting for someone to toss a bill my way, or tell me I owed them for existing. Nora came over some nights, bringing pizza or cheap wine, and we'd sit on the couch, laughing at old movies, the TV flickering in the dark. Her laughter was loud, her stories wild, and for the first time I felt like I belonged, not to a house but to myself. One Saturday, unpacking the last box, I found it, the little plastic cake topper from my 30th birthday, the night my parents threw me out. It was bent, its cheap edge glinting in the afternoon sun streaming through the window. I held it in my palm, the weight light but heavy with memory. That night had hurt. The buzzing kitchen lights, Dad's cold words, Mom's silence, the cake smeared on the carpet. But now, it didn't sting. It wasn't about them anymore. It was proof I'd survived, proof I was stronger than their betrayal. I set it on a shelf above my desk, next to a candle I'd bought myself, its wick unburned, waiting for a new kind of celebration. It wasn't a sad trophy, it was mine, a sign of the girl who didn't break. That evening, I stood by my living room window, the glass cool against my fingers, the town stretched out below, its lights blinking on like tiny stars, the air carrying the smell of wood smoke and distant rain. I thought about the house I'd left, dark now, its porch light out, newspapers piling up. I didn't feel guilt anymore, just a quiet ache for the girl who'd tried so hard to be enough for them. I'd given them everything, money, time, pieces of my heart, and they'd thrown it away. But here, in this creaky apartment, I was building something they couldn't touch. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it was earned, like a deep breath after running too long. I remembered the festival, the way Mrs. Langford's smile had warmed me, the church lady's gentle words, "You deserved better." The town had seen me, not as the villain Dad painted, but as the daughter who'd carried their world until she couldn't. The whispers had turned to truth, and I didn't need to shout anymore. I'd won, not by fighting their way but by choosing mine. I thought about Mom's last voicemail, her voice sticky with fake tears, and Dad's text, sharp with rage. They hadn't changed, but I had. I wasn't the girl who paid their bills to earn love. I was Anan, and I was enough. One night, as I sat by the window, a mug of tea steaming in my hands, I watched the moon rise, silver and full, over the rooftops. The air smelled clean, like frost was coming, and the street below hummed with small sounds, dogs barking, kids laughing, a car rumbling by. Life didn't stop because my world had cracked open, it kept moving, and so did I. I whispered to the quiet room, I'm enough, the words soft but sure, like a vow I'd waited my whole life to make. For the first time I believed them. Family, I learned, isn't just the people you're born to, it's the ones who see you, who choose you, who don't ask you to break yourself to fit their needs. Nora was family now, with her chipped mugs and loud laughs. The town was family, in its own way, with its whispers turning to nods of respect. And I was family to myself, maybe the most important one of all. I'd lost the house I grew up in, the parents I thought I needed, but I'd found something better, peace, stitched together from choice, not obligation. As I turned from the window, the lamplight glowed warm, casting soft shadows on the blue walls. My apartment wasn't perfect, creaky, drafty, small, but it was mine, a place where I could be Anne, not a freeloader, not a snake, just me. The cake topper caught the light, a tiny spark of defiance. I smiled, my heart light, like a bird finally free of its cage. My story wasn't over, it was just beginning, and I was writing it my way, one quiet, brave step at a time.